Good morning, my name is Carolyn Klauba and I'm the Stewardship Director for the Starling Conservancy. Today I'm at Pinelands Nursery with Tom and Steve, and we're going to be talking about collecting native plant seeds and also the importance of leaving your plants at the end of the season, not cutting them down. So we're going to go over a bunch of different topics, how to collect seeds and dry it out and separate it and store it for getting ready for winter planting. So we're in a greenhouse here, or a hoop house. Can you tell us what's going on?
I'll explain that. So we just harvested our Echinacea purpurea, also known as purple coneflower, and we're spreading it out in this greenhouse right now because it'll dry. So we have the ventilation open over here, and we have a circuit fan over there, and it's pulling air through and kind of baking in the sun. So this seed will slowly start to dry out. And we're gonna have to come through here once or twice and fluff it up and flip it around with a pitchfork so that air really circulates through, otherwise it'll get really moldy. And eventually, after that, about 50% of the seed will fall off the heads when it's ready to. It'll kind of, when you move it around and turn it around, it'll start falling off, and the rest of it, we're gonna put it through a machine that kind of beats it up. We call it a seed mauler, and it turns it up and breaks it up into pieces. And from there, we'll put it through another machine, which we'll show you guys in a little bit.
Awesome. So how do you know when your seed is dry, and do you have issues with mold or anything else when you're in the drying stage?
Oh yeah, so that could be a big issue. So you have to be kind of diligent. I'm a little worried because it's Friday, so I might have to come in on Sunday morning or something and fluff it up. And also, it's been very humid, so it doesn't dry as well when it's humid in the morning. Also, when you go to clean it, if it's a humid morning, it will not break apart. Kind of, when we test it to make sure it's ready, you want the stem to snap. So that doesn't really snap, it's kind of like cracking in half. You want it to just pop right in half and break perfectly clean. And that's when you can kind of tell it's ready for the mauler and ready to be put through the next process.
So if somebody's doing this at home, and obviously like we wouldn't have a hoop house, what's a good way for people to dry their seeds at home?
Well, first I would recommend don't take as much of the plant like we do. We have to do it for the sake of efficiency. We can't go and grab individual seed heads. If you're doing it at home, just grab the seed head, and if you're timing it up right, because you're checking on it every day, now you know the seed is already going to be fairly dry. Then you're just going to leave it in like a brown paper bag. You can even put it in the fridge, and then it will kind of naturally dry out on its own. As long as your refrigerator doesn't have too much humidity level, that's really the main driver, is you want to get it down to a point where it will actually dry. If the humidity in your refrigerator or even in your house is just too high, above 60 to 70%, then the seed will never dry down quite enough. We aim to keep it, when we're storing it, around 50% humidity. That keeps it so it doesn't get too dried out and actually ruin the germination percentages, or too wet where it'll mold.
I love that idea of putting it in the fridge. I had not thought of that at all. That is not the place where I would have thought to store.
That's what we do, except on a jumbo scale. We have a big refrigerator we're putting just seed in. We don't have any cold cuts or anything else in there.
I'm just thinking of some ideas, something that I might do. I'm not promoting the use of plastic, but you got like a contractor plastic bag. You could, you collect your seed in that, and when you're ready, you can kind of cut that bag in half and leave it out in the sun to dry out there. And if you're diligent, you've got to pull it in, maybe put it in the garage or something at the end of the day. If you leave it out in the sun for like 2 days in the nice dry sun, it'll be dry and ready to clean in no time.
Awesome. Well, let's look a little bit more, and then maybe you could show us the cleaning process, or what the seeds look like once they've already been cleaned.
Yep. This is the Erigrostis spectabilis, and I'm just going to rub some of the seed out. So I'm just going to smush it in between my hands. Something you could do as a homeowner. You can find this on the side of the road pretty regularly. And you can mash it up in your hands, and you give it a little blow. You can kind of see some of that orange dusty seed. It's very small in there. And you can go out and either store it in your refrigerator for a little while to stratify it, or you can sprinkle it right in the garden and let nature do it.
My name is Carla Dinetz. I've been with Pinelands for 5 years, and this time of the year I am like basically a one-man show of all the seed cleaning and seed processing up here.
So could you tell us the process of cleaning seeds and why it's important to clean the seeds?
Sure. So the process begins obviously out in the field. Seeds get harvested. They dry for a little while. They come up here, and we put them through a variety of different machines to sort of break down what is plant material and what is the seed. So once we get it through, a couple of these machines go through different processes. This one separates things by size, and then we have another machine over there that separates things by weight. And it's important to try and separate the seed from the plant material as well as the seed from what could be weed seeds, because that definitely influences the quality of the seed that we're selling to everybody.
Wonderful. So
Yeah.
could you tell us how this machine that you're working on works?
Okay, sure. This is a clipper, and it's got 2 screens on it. So it's got, you take the plant material, the bulk plant material that comes through, whether it's a hammer mill or straight out of the greenhouse or something like that. We take the bulk plant material. So once it's been through the hammer mill, it basically just looks like just ground up plant material. There's seed pods, there's sticks, there's all kinds of stuff. So on this machine, we separate it between the large garbage gets separated from one screen, the seed and fine garbage falls to the next screen, and then the fine garbage falls through, and then the seed travels out. So this one separates by the size of the material. And then from there, once we've got it separated by size, you typically take it from this machine and put it on something that separates by weight. And the weight, it's a gravity table. So the one that separates by weight is actually pretty cool, because even though seed might look like seed, if it doesn't have the meat, the embryo, the actual live seed, it's a lot lighter. So you actually get the heavier seed, which is the live seed, to travel, as opposed to the lighter seed, which gets sifted out. So that's pretty
Very cool.
Yeah.
For folks at home that don't have access to machines like this, just the home gardener, do you have any suggestions of how they could do something like this at home with, seed heads they collected from their garden?
You can just put them on a window screen, depending on the size of the seed. Just make sure you let the seed heads dry out. Just kind of rough them up, and see if the seeds fall out, if you can recognize the seed. And then if you just put it on a window screen, or any kind of sieve or a screen, just pretty much anything, it just kind of takes the garbage out. That's what I do at home anyway, because obviously I don't have any of these at my house. So
Very cool. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So for reference, this is the seed that I'm currently working on. It's Baptisia tinctoria, which is the yellow wild indigo. You can see the bulk material that initially comes up here after it's been ground down. There's a few seeds that you can see on top, but it is a lot of waste and plant material garbage. But after a few different screens and different machines, it actually turns it, like, we can get it cleaned up to pretty decently clean seed.
So where are we now in the process of seed collection, and what are you doing here?
Yeah, so once we are done cleaning the seed, once Carla does her magic and everything is nice and clean, we will weigh it and bag it up, and then we bring it into this seed cooler, which is basically a refurbished refrigerated trailer, like what you're seeing down the highway that's taking ice cream and all the good stuff to the supermarket. We bought one of them for the time being, and we refurbished it, so it's just sitting here, and we'll actually bring the seed in here to keep it cold. So we have it a dehumidifier in here to keep the humidity around 50%. If it's 40% to 60%, not a huge deal, but you want to keep it around 50% for what we're doing. And then we want it cold, so we're trying to keep it in between like 40 and 50 degrees. You don't want to get so cold that it's actually freezing, because that can damage the seed, and you definitely don't want to get too hot, because that can damage the seed as well. Or what's detrimental for us is it could potentially germinate sometimes, and then we aren't able to sell that seed if it germinates. So basically that's the big thing, is we're trying to preserve this seed for as long as we can, which amounts to oftentimes a couple years. We can even get 5, 6, even 7 years of life out of some of these species, and it's all species dependent. Some stuff's only really good for 1 or 2 years. Other things are good for, like I said, 6 or 7 years.
So I know in the last time I came here and we talked, you had shown us where you're stratifying seeds, and you would put it in a bag with wet soil or Chromix or sand, and put it back in the fridge to let it stratify. How long after it's been stratified can you keep it, or do you have to plant it right away after that 30-day or 60 or 90-day period, or can you keep the seed again, or is it no good?
So it all depends, and it's one of the reasons for our seed sales why we don't stratify the seed. A lot of the native species need stratification to germinate. We mentioned milkweed before. Milkweed is something where if you just plant it in the ground, you're lucky to get a plant or two come up if you planted 100 seeds. Once you stratify it, you give it that 30 days, 60 days of cold, moist temperatures, basically just taking some sand or some soil and putting, or even a wet paper towel, and putting it in a bag in your fridge for a couple days, or for 30 days or a month or two, basically. Almost all of that seed will germinate. Well, we don't necessarily want that seed to germinate, so when we're stratifying, and that's why we don't stratify it for our seed sales. When we're growing plants, we need to stratify a lot of those, but there is a lifespan on that stratified seed. Sometimes you can get away with 2 years, but the big thing is you got to keep that temperature consistent. So, and we've had times where our stratification cooler, the condenser malfunctioned, and now the temperature goes way up, and we have stuff germinating in the bags in the cooler because the temperature really, it doesn't have to get that warm, only like 45 or 50, and things will start to germinate. So in that stratification cooler, we're actually keeping things a lot lower, probably in the mid 30s, where with this seed we'll keep it around 40 to 50 degrees and it won't germinate because it hasn't been stratified. But it allows us to keep that the unstratified seed so much longer, since it's not naturally breaking down that seed coat in the stratification process through that cold and moist environment.
So for somebody at home, if they were going to store seeds that say they were going to move and they wanted to store seeds and not plant those next year, they would just keep them in a plastic bag like that, as much air out as possible, and just keep it in the fridge?
Yeah, exactly. And one of the things you'll notice here is these white bags, also a plastic material, but it's woven plastic material, and that's actually so that the seed can breathe a little bit, and it allows some of that moisture to escape even after the cleaning process. And it'll basically, like I said, we're trying to keep this room about 40 to 50% humidity on the lower side. That'll allow that seed to, even maybe we package it and it was at 60% humidity, well, it's off-putting more moisture. If you have it in a solid plastic bag like this one here, it's not able to do that. So this has to be definitely dry. So even at home, you can put it in a plastic bag. You just got to make sure it's on the drier side, or it could mold. Or you can put it in a brown paper bag, and you can save seeds a long time that way. Maybe not quite as long as we are, just because we're not opening this door every day and letting all the cold air out like you would with your refrigerator when you're getting the milk out. Every time you're opening it, some of that cool air is releasing, and you have the temperature variation that's changing every time you open the door and then close it. So it might not last quite as long, but you could probably save seed for a few years that way, just in a brown paper bag tucked in the back of your refrigerator.
That's awesome. So I really appreciate the time and all the knowledge that you've shared with us. Is there any last take-home messages for folks about collecting and storing and producing plants from seed that you want to share? Yeah,
it's not as hard as we make it look. So there's certain standards that we have to uphold because we're selling the seed. We have to make sure we get all the leaves out and all the stems out, and it's as pure as possible as we can do it, because a lot of our customers are buying sometimes hundreds of pounds, and then they're planting it over acres and acres through seed drills. They're basically planting it mechanically, and once you get more equipment involved, the things have to be very precise. And if you have a stem in there, it could clog up the whole drill and ruin everything. If you're doing it at home, you don't need to be that precise. Frankly, it's a lot easier. You can go out, you can really time when those couple of plants that you want to collect seed off of are exactly ready. You don't have to collect some stuff that's not quite ready and some stuff that's been too ready, because you're collecting off so many plants. You're just picking off a couple plants. A lot easier to clean it because you have a more refined, you're just picking a couple seed pods or a couple seed heads off. You don't have to get as much of the plant material that we have to clean out. And then with the storage, it's really not as laborious of a thing, because you have a refrigerator. Everyone has a refrigerator at home, and you probably have a little space that you can tuck a plastic bag or tuck a paper bag into and forget about until the next season. So yeah, it's really not that hard. Don't be scared to do it. It's and even with all your native plants, just go and get used to them. Find out when they're clicking. Even if you just pick a couple handfuls and take it and just throw it in another spot in your yard or in the wild area that's kind of in the corner by your house or right up against the woods, it's a great place to disperse native seeds, and then naturally they're actually gonna inhabit or grow in those areas. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much.